The Galactic Council's Grand Assembly Hall stretched across 3 levels, its walls made of pure starlight crystal that captured and reflected the distant glow of 1,000 worlds. Representatives from across the galaxy had gathered for the annual Unity Summit, where member civilizations shared their greatest achievements and offered aid to those in need. The air hummed with translation devices working in overdrive, converting hundreds of languages into something every species could understand. Ben Rivers sat quietly in the human delegation section, reviewing his notes one final time. At 35, he had already revolutionized medicine across 12 star systems with his quantum healing protocols. His weathered hands moved carefully across the data pad, double-checking the medical supply figures that Earth was prepared to share freely with any world that needed them. The human delegation was small compared to others, just 5 representatives including Ben, but their contribution to galactic welfare far exceeded their numbers. Princess Zara of the Kelthani Empire made her entrance with the dramatic flair her people were known for. Her crystalline skin caught the starlight and threw it back in brilliant rainbow patterns that made other delegates shield their eyes. She wore the traditional royal armor of her house, each piece carved from meteoric stone and inlaid with precious metals from conquered worlds. Behind her walked 12 of her personal guard, their weapons gleaming as a not-so-subtle reminder of Kelthani military might. The Kelthani Empire controlled nearly a quarter of the known galaxy through a combination of advanced technology and overwhelming force. Their ships could travel faster than any other civilization, their weapons could crack planets, and their armies had never known defeat in open battle. Princess Zara had grown up believing that strength was the only currency that mattered in the universe, and everything she had seen in her 19 years had confirmed this belief. Ambassador Trell of the Vorthan Collective stepped to the central podium, his 4 arms gesturing gracefully as he opened the day's proceedings. Honored delegates, we gather today to share the gifts of our civilizations with those who face hardship across the stars. Let us begin with the generous offer from the Human Coalition. Ben stood slowly and walked to the speaker's platform. His appearance drew some surprised looks from newer delegates who had never seen humans before. Compared to the towering Vorthans or the crystalline Kelthanis, humans seemed almost disappointingly ordinary. Ben wore a simple gray diplomatic uniform with no decorations except a small earth insignia on his collar. His brown hair was turning gray at the temples, and his face bore the lines of someone who had spent countless nights working in emergency medical facilities. Honored representatives, Ben began, his voice carrying clearly through the translation systems, Earth offers to share our quantum medical protocols with any civilization requesting aid. These treatments can repair cellular damage at the molecular level and have proven effective across 17 different biological frameworks. We also offer to establish mobile medical stations in any system experiencing medical emergencies, staffed by our doctors and supplied at no cost to the receiving worlds. A murmur of appreciation rippled through the assembly. The human medical advances had become legendary across the galaxy. When the Proxima Plague had threatened to wipe out entire civilizations 3 years ago, human doctors had worked without sleep for months to develop treatments that saved billions of lives. They had shared their discoveries freely, asking for nothing in return. Ben continued his presentation, displaying holographic images of the medical equipment Earth was prepared to distribute. Our latest development involves portable healing units that can treat injuries and diseases in remote locations. Each unit is self-sustaining and can operate for 50 years without maintenance. We propose to place them in systems where traditional medical infrastructure has been damaged by natural disasters or conflict. Several delegates nodded approvingly. The Andromedan Mining Consortium leaned forward with obvious interest, as their workers frequently operated in dangerous conditions far from proper medical facilities. The peaceful Zolarian Federation smiled with their characteristic warmth, no doubt thinking of their recent struggles with solar radiation sickness on their outer colonies. Princess Zara had been listening with growing irritation. The attention focused on this unremarkable human bothered her more than she cared to admit. How could these advanced civilizations show such interest in the offerings of a species that had only achieved space travel within the last century? The Kelthanis had been traveling between stars when humans were still learning to make fire. As Ben began explaining the technical specifications of the healing units, Princess Zara stood abruptly. Her crystalline armor caught the starlight and sent brilliant flashes across the assembly hall, immediately drawing all attention to her imposing figure. Several delegates instinctively moved back from the rainbow patterns dancing across their vision. "I must interrupt this presentation," Princess Zara announced, her voice carrying the absolute authority of someone who had never been denied anything in her life. The translation devices struggled with the harmonic overtones in her speech, creating an almost musical quality that somehow made her words more commanding. Ben paused mid-sentence and looked toward the Kelthani princess with patient curiosity. He showed no sign of anger or frustration at the interruption, merely the polite attention of someone waiting to hear what another delegate wished to contribute. Princess Zara stepped into the center aisle, her guard moving automatically to flank her. This assembly wastes precious time listening to the primitive offerings of a species that barely crawled from their caves yesterday. Your kind still fights wars over water and patches of dirt while truly advanced civilizations have moved beyond such base concerns. The assembly hall fell into complete silence. Even the background hum of the translation devices seemed to quiet as if the technology itself was shocked by what it had just processed. Delegates who had been taking notes stopped writing. Those who had been quietly conversing with their neighbors turned to stare at the princess in disbelief. Princess Zara seemed energized by the attention and continued her speech with growing confidence. "The Kelthani Empire has protected the peace of this galaxy for 1,000 years through strength and superior technology. We have brought order to chaos and civilization to the primitive. Why should this council waste time listening to medical babble from mammals who still cannot prevent wars among their own kind?" Ambassador Trell looked desperately between Ben and Princess Zara, clearly unsure how to handle such an unprecedented breach of diplomatic protocol. In the 300 years since the Galactic Council's formation, no delegate had ever interrupted another's presentation with personal attacks. The concept was so foreign to civilized discourse that the Council's rules did not even address how to respond to such behavior. Ben remained standing at the podium, his expression unchanged. He looked neither angry nor hurt by the princess's words. Instead, he seemed to be studying her with the same patient attention he might give to a complex medical problem. His silence stretched for nearly a full minute while Princess Zara basked in what she assumed was his shocked inability to respond to her obvious superiority. Finally, Ben moved. He reached for his data pad and closed it with a soft click that somehow carried clearly through the silent assembly hall. His movements were slow and deliberate as he unplugged the device from the podium's connection port. He gathered his few papers and slipped them into the worn leather portfolio that had traveled with him to emergency medical sites across the galaxy. Princess Zara watched these simple actions with growing unease. She had expected anger, argument, or at least some attempt at self-defense. Instead, the human was simply packing up his materials as if he had finished his presentation and was preparing to leave. Ben stepped down from the podium and walked back toward his seat in the human delegation section. His 4 colleagues looked at him with expressions of concern and confusion, but he merely shook his head slightly and continued gathering his belongings. The other human representatives began closing their own data pads and collecting their materials without a word of protest or explanation. "Where do you think you are going?" Princess Zara demanded, her voice rising with indignation. "I was not finished speaking." Ben turned to face her one final time. His brown eyes met her crystalline ones across the assembly hall, and several delegates later claimed they could feel something pass between them in that moment of contact. When Ben spoke, his voice was quiet but somehow carried to every corner of the vast chamber. "I believe you have said everything that needs to be said, Your Highness." With that, Ben Rivers turned and walked toward the exit. His 4 colleagues followed without question, their departure as quiet and dignified as their arrival had been that morning. The heavy doors of the assembly hall were designed to open silently, but somehow the soft whisper they made as the human delegation passed through seemed to echo in the absolute stillness that had fallen over the gathering. Princess Zara stood in the center aisle, surrounded by her guard but suddenly feeling completely alone. She looked around at the faces of delegates from 100 worlds and saw expressions she was not accustomed to seeing directed at a member of the Kelthani royal family. There was no fear, no awe, no respectful attention. Instead, she saw disappointment, confusion, and something that might have been pity. The silence stretched for another long moment before Ambassador Trell cleared his throat and attempted to restore some semblance of order to the proceedings. Perhaps we should take a brief recess to allow delegates time to process the morning's events. As the assembly hall began to empty, Princess Zara remained standing in the same spot where Ben Rivers had quietly declined to engage with her attacks. She replayed the scene in her mind, trying to understand why the human's calm departure felt like a more devastating response than any angry words could have been. For the first time in her 19 years of life, Princess Zara of the Kelthani Empire began to suspect that she might have made a terrible mistake. The first sign of trouble came exactly 6 hours after Ben Rivers left the Galactic Council Assembly Hall. Communications Officer Nina Walsh sat at her station aboard the human diplomatic vessel Aurora, watching message after message flood their secure channels. Her fingers moved quickly across the control panel as she tried to keep up with the incoming transmissions from across 12 star systems. "Captain Torres," Nina called across the bridge, "you need to see this. We're getting priority messages from medical facilities throughout the Outer Rim. They're all asking the same question." Captain Maria Torres moved to Nina's station and read the messages scrolling across the screen. Her expression grew more serious with each transmission. Medical stations that had been receiving regular shipments of human-manufactured medicines were reporting that their supply vessels had suddenly changed course. The ships were not responding to communication attempts and had simply vanished from their scheduled routes. "Get me a direct line to Dr. Rivers," Captain Torres ordered. "And send a message to Earth Command. They need to know what's happening out here." 3 systems away, Princess Zara paced the crystalline corridors of the Kelthani flagship Dominion. Her royal chambers reflected her agitated mood, the walls shifting from their usual calm blue to angry red patterns as her emotions affected the living crystal architecture. Her personal advisor, Minister Kane, stood near the entrance with increasingly troubling reports. "Your Highness," Minister Kane said carefully, "we have received 17 cancellation notices in the past 4 hours. The Andromedan Mining Consortium has suspended all contract negotiations. The Zalarian Federation has postponed their trade summit indefinitely. The Vorthan Collective has recalled their ambassador for what they call, consultation on diplomatic protocols." Princess Zara stopped pacing and turned to face her advisor. "They cannot seriously be reacting to my words at the council meeting. I spoke nothing but truth about human primitiveness. Why would advanced civilizations side with such inferior beings?" Minister Kane shifted uncomfortably. In his 40 years of service to the royal family, he had learned to recognize when political situations were becoming dangerous. "Your Highness, perhaps we should investigate exactly who this Ben Rivers is before drawing conclusions about the situation." "What is there to investigate?" Princess Zara snapped. "He is a human. His species achieved space travel barely 100 years ago. They have no significant military power and control only a few dozen worlds. How important could one individual possibly be?" On the human colony world of New Geneva, Dr. Sarah Chin received an encrypted message that made her stop mid-surgery. The patient on her operating table was a young Kelthani noble who had been suffering from a rare genetic condition that only human quantum medicine could treat. Dr. Chen had been working for 6 hours to repair the damage at the cellular level, using techniques that Ben Rivers himself had developed. "Dr. Kim," she called to her assistant, "take over here. Use the same sequence we discussed, but reduce the quantum frequency by 0.3%. The patient's crystalline biology responds better to the lower setting." Dr. Chen stepped away from the operating table and read the message more carefully. It was from Ben Rivers himself, sent through diplomatic channels. The message was brief but clear: all human medical assistance to Kelthani territories was to be suspended immediately. No explanations were given, no demands were made. The humans were simply withdrawing their help. "Dr. Chen," Dr. Kim said from the operating table, "what do I do with the patient? We're only halfway through the treatment." Dr. Chen looked at the young Kelthani prince lying unconscious on the table. Without the complete treatment, he would survive but never fully recover. With it, he could live a completely normal life. Continue the procedure, she said quietly. We don't abandon patients who are already under our care. But this will be the last Kelthani patient we treat until further notice. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out on dozens of human medical vessels and stations. Doctors completed their current treatments but quietly declined to accept new Kelthani patients. No angry words were spoken, no accusations were made. The humans simply began treating the Kelthani Empire as if it had ceased to exist. Ambassador Trell of the Vorthan Collective sat in his private office reviewing the day's intelligence reports. As one of the galaxy's oldest diplomatic services, the Vorthans maintained extensive networks of information gathering that helped them navigate the complex politics of interstellar relations. Today, those networks were all reporting the same unprecedented phenomenon. Send for my cultural affairs advisor, Ambassador Trell instructed his aide. I need to understand human behavioral patterns better than I currently do. Within an hour, Dr. Penn Williams sat across from Ambassador Trell in the embassy's secure briefing room. Dr. Williams was a human anthropologist who had spent 20 years studying interspecies relations for the Vorthan government. His expertise in human psychology had proven valuable in dozens of diplomatic situations. Ambassador, Dr. Williams began, I've reviewed the recordings from today's council session. Princess Zara made a critical error in how she approached Dr. Rivers. Humans respond very differently to public insults than most species do. Explain, Ambassador Trell said, all four of his arms focused intently on taking notes. Most species either respond with immediate anger or submit to superior force. Humans do neither. When insulted by someone they perceive as unreasonable, they simply stop engaging entirely. They don't argue, they don't fight, they just walk away. But walking away doesn't mean they forget. Ambassador Trell looked up from his notes. Are you suggesting that the humans are orchestrating some form of economic warfare against the Kelthani Empire? Not warfare, Dr. Williams corrected. Indifference. They're treating the Kelthanis exactly the way Princess Zara treated them at the council meeting. As if they don't exist and their needs don't matter. On the trading station Deep Harbor, Merchant Captain Lisa Brooks received confirmation of her new cargo manifest. Instead of delivering rare earth medicines to Kelthani colonies as originally planned, her ship Wanderer would be redirecting to Zalarian space where refugees from recent solar storms desperately needed medical supplies. Captain, her first officer asked, what do I tell the Kelthani Port Authority when they ask why we're not coming to their system? Tell them we had to change our route for operational reasons, Captain Brooks replied. Nothing more, nothing less. The first officer nodded but looked confused. Captain, forgive me for asking, but why are we really changing course? The Kelthani contract pays 3 times what the Zalarians can afford. Captain Brooks turned from her navigation console to face her crew. Sometimes there are more important things than money. The Zalarians treat our people with respect. They say please and thank you. They remember our names and ask about our families. The Kelthanis treat us like servants who should be grateful for their business. But this is just one trade route, the first officer pointed out. How much difference can it really make? Captain Brooks smiled. Contact the other merchant captains in our trading guild. Ask them if they heard about what happened at the Galactic Council today. Then ask them where they want to deliver their next cargo shipments. Princess Zara stood in the command center of the Dominion, watching tactical displays that showed shipping routes throughout Kelthani space. Red warning indicators marked locations where expected supply deliveries had failed to arrive. Her military advisors surrounded her with reports of missed medical shipments, cancelled trade agreements, and suspended diplomatic meetings. Your Highness, General Voss said, we could send military escorts to force the human ships to honor their contracts. With what justification? Princess Zara asked. They haven't broken any laws. They haven't made any threats. They're simply choosing to do business elsewhere. Then we can find other suppliers, suggested Admiral Nash. Surely other species can provide what we need. Minister Kane stepped forward with a data pad full of economic projections. I've researched alternatives, Your Highness. Human medical technology is approximately 50 years ahead of the next most advanced civilization. Their agricultural products grow in environments where nothing else will survive. Their manufacturing techniques produce materials that last 3 times longer than our own. Princess Zara stared at the tactical display as more red indicators appeared. How did a primitive species become so essential to galactic commerce? Perhaps, Minister Kane said very carefully, they are not as primitive as we assumed. In his quarters aboard the Aurora, Ben Rivers sat reading medical journals and responding to messages from colleagues across human space. He had not issued any orders for the suspension of aid to Kelthani territories. He had not called for boycotts or organized any form of protest. He had simply returned to his ship and continued his work as if the morning's events had never happened. Captain Torres knocked on his door and entered when he called for her to come in. Ben, I need to ask you something. Did you know this would happen? Ben looked up from his reading. Did I know what would happen? The trade suspensions, the cancelled contracts, the medical supply redirections. Every human operation in this sector has quietly stopped dealing with the Kelthanis. Did you coordinate this somehow? Ben considered the question for a moment. No, Maria. I didn't coordinate anything. I simply decided that my time and energy were better spent helping people who actually wanted help. And every other human in the galaxy reached the same conclusion independently. Apparently so. Ben returned to his journal. Humans have a saying, respect is earned, not demanded. Princess Zara made it clear that she has no respect for our species. So we're choosing to focus our efforts on species who do appreciate what we offer. Captain Torres sat down across from Ben. Do you realize what you've done? The Kelthani Empire is one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy. They could declare war over this. They could, Ben agreed. But they won't. Because deep down, they know that everything Princess Zara said about humans was wrong. And now they're going to have to decide whether their pride is worth more than our friendship. As night fell across the galaxy, Princess Zara stood alone on the observation deck of her flagship, watching the stars and thinking about a quiet human who had refused to argue with her. For the first time in her young life, she began to wonder if strength and respect were the same thing after all. 3 weeks had passed since the Galactic Council meeting, and Princess Zara found herself in a place she had never expected to visit, the human colony of New Geneva. She had arrived quietly, without her royal guard or ceremonial armor, wearing the simple grey robes of a diplomatic observer. Her crystalline skin was covered with makeup that dulled its natural shine, making her appearance less distinctive among the diverse population of the orbital medical station. The journey to human space had not been easy to arrange. Her father, Emperor Thane, had forbidden any official contact with human territories after the diplomatic crisis that followed her speech at the council. 3 Kelthani colonies were now experiencing medical supply shortages, and their trade agreements with 12 other species had been cancelled or suspended. The Empire's reputation for strength was being damaged by their inability to force the humans back to the negotiating table. Princess Zara walked through the corridors of Medical Station Aurora, observing the daily operations of human medicine. The facility orbited New Geneva, one of the newer human colonies that specialized in treating patients from across the galaxy. What she saw challenged everything she thought she knew about primitive civilizations. Human doctors worked alongside medical staff from 17 different species. Zolarian nurses with their translucent skin tended to patients in beds next to Vorthan technicians calibrating equipment with their 4 skilled arms. Andromedan engineers shared consultation rooms with human specialists, comparing notes on treatments for silicon-based life forms. The facility operated as a perfect example of interspecies cooperation, with humans serving as coordinators rather than rulers. "Excuse me," Princess Zara said to a passing human doctor, "I am researching medical facilities for my government. Could you tell me about your patient intake procedures?" Dr. Sarachan turned to face the disguised princess with a friendly smile. "Of course. Are you interested in any particular type of treatment?" We handle everything from basic injury repair to complex genetic reconstruction. Princess Zara followed Dr. Chen through a section of the station dedicated to long-term care. Through transparent walls, she could see patients from dozens of species receiving treatment in specialized environments designed for their specific biological needs. "Do you treat all species equally here?" she asked carefully. "Every patient receives the same quality of care," Dr. Chen replied. "We modify our techniques for different biologies, but the commitment to healing remains constant. Actually, we recently completed a very challenging case involving crystalline biology. The patient required 6 months of continuous quantum cellular repair." Something in the doctor's tone made Princess Zara's chest tighten with sudden anxiety. "Crystalline biology? You mean Kelthani physiology?" "Yes, a young prince who suffered from genetic cascade failure. Dr. Rivers developed the treatment protocol specifically for his condition. The prince made a complete recovery and returned home last week." Princess Zara stopped walking. Her younger brother Davin had indeed suffered from genetic cascade failure, a condition that Kelthani medicine could slow but never cure. He had been sent to a distant medical facility 6 months ago for experimental treatment. Their parents had told her he was receiving care from Kelthani specialists, but apparently that had been a carefully constructed lie to protect diplomatic relations. "Dr. Rivers treated this patient personally?" Princess Zara asked, struggling to keep her voice steady. "Oh yes, Ben took special interest in the case. Crystalline biology is fascinating to work with, and the prince was such a polite young man. He wrote thank you notes to all the staff before he left. Very different from the stereotype some people have about Kelthani nobility." Dr. Chen led Princess Zara to an observation deck that overlooked the station's main treatment facility. Below them, human medical teams worked frantically to treat a group of refugees who had just arrived from a system devastated by solar radiation. The patients were Zolarians whose transparent skin showed the damage caused by cosmic radiation exposure. "These people arrived this morning," Dr. Chen explained. "Their colony ship's shielding failed during a solar storm. Without immediate treatment, the radiation damage would kill them within days. We're using quantum cellular repair to rebuild their damaged tissue at the molecular level." Princess Zara watched human doctors working alongside Zolarian medical staff to save lives. The humans showed no concern for payment or political advantage. They simply saw beings who needed help and provided it without question. "Do the Zolarians have anything to offer in return for this treatment?" "Their musical healing techniques are extraordinary," Dr. Chen said with genuine enthusiasm. "Zolarian harmonic therapy can accelerate healing in ways we're still learning to understand. Every species brings something valuable to medicine. The art is learning how to combine different approaches for the best results." A familiar figure appeared at the far end of the observation deck, and Princess Zara's breath caught in her throat. Ben Rivers stood quietly watching the medical operations below, his weathered face showing the same patient concentration she remembered from the council meeting. He wore a simple medical coat over casual clothing, looking nothing like the diplomatic representative who had commanded the attention of the Galactic Assembly. Dr. Chen noticed Princess Zara's sudden tension. "Do you know Dr. Rivers?" "We have met briefly," Princess Zara said, unsure whether to approach him or try to leave unnoticed. "Ben is remarkable," Dr. Chen continued. "He never talks about his own achievements, but he's revolutionized medicine for half the galaxy. The quantum protocols he developed have saved billions of lives. And he shares everything freely. Patents, research data, training materials. He says knowledge that saves lives should belong to everyone." Ben turned and noticed the 2 women watching him. His eyes met Princess Zara's across the observation deck, and she saw the same calm recognition that had marked his departure from the council meeting. He walked toward them with unhurried steps, showing no surprise at finding the Kelthani princess in his medical station. "Your Highness," Ben said with a polite nod. "I hope you're finding your visit educational." Dr. Chen looked between them with obvious confusion. "Your Highness. I'm sorry, I didn't realize you were royalty." "Princess Zara of the Kelthani Empire," Ben said quietly. Though I suspect she prefers to observe without ceremony today. Princess Zara felt her carefully constructed composure beginning to crack. Dr. Rivers, I need to ask you something. My brother Prince Davin received treatment here for genetic cascade failure. He did, Ben confirmed. A challenging case, but we were able to repair the genetic damage completely. He should live a normal, healthy life now. You treated him even after I insulted your entire species at the Galactic Council, Princess Zara said, her voice barely above a whisper. Ben studied her face with the same patient attention he had shown during her speech 3 weeks earlier. Medical ethics don't change based on political disagreements, Your Highness. A patient who needs help receives help. That's not negotiable. Dr. Chen excused herself tactfully, sensing that the conversation had become deeply personal. Princess Zara and Ben stood alone on the observation deck, watching the medical teams work below them. I don't understand your people, Princess Zara admitted. You could have let my brother die to make a political point. You could have demanded an apology before providing treatment. Instead, you saved his life and never even told us it was you doing it. Would knowing have changed anything? Ben asked. Would you have spoken differently at the council if you had known that human doctors were keeping your brother alive? Princess Zara considered the question honestly. 3 weeks ago, she would have seen the medical treatment as something the Kelthanis deserved simply because of their superior position in the galaxy. She would not have felt gratitude, only the expectation that lesser species should serve their betters. Probably not, she admitted. Then it was better that you didn't know, Ben said simply. Your words at the council revealed what you truly believe about other species. That honesty was valuable, even if it was painful to hear. Valuable? I created a diplomatic crisis that has damaged relations between our species for generations. Ben turned to face her fully for the first time since their conversation began. You revealed the truth about Kelthani attitudes toward the rest of the galaxy. That truth was always there, Your Highness. Speaking it out loud simply made it impossible for anyone to pretend otherwise. Princess Zara felt tears forming in her crystalline eyes, something that had not happened since her childhood. I was wrong about humans. I was wrong about strength and superiority. I was wrong about everything. Being wrong isn't the problem, Ben said gently. Refusing to learn from being wrong is the problem. The question now is what you choose to do with this knowledge. A soft chime announced the arrival of another group of refugees. Through the observation windows, Princess Zara could see Andromedan miners being brought into the treatment facility. Their silicon-based bodies showed severe damage from a mining accident, and human doctors immediately began coordinating with Andromedan medical specialists to provide appropriate care. Why do you help everyone? Princess Zara asked. Your species could demand payment, political concessions, strategic advantages. Instead, you give away your most valuable knowledge for free. Because helping others makes us stronger, Ben replied. Every species we heal teaches us something new about medicine. Every civilization we assist becomes a potential ally and trading partner. Every life we save creates connections that benefit everyone. True strength doesn't come from conquering others. It comes from lifting them up. Princess Zara watched the medical teams working together below them. Humans, Zalarians, Vorthans, and Andromedans worked as a single coordinated unit, each contributing their unique abilities to save lives. She began to understand that this cooperation was not a sign of weakness but the ultimate expression of civilization. Dr. Rivers, she said finally, I would like to make a formal apology to you and your people. And I would like to discuss how the Kelthani Empire might contribute to your medical research programs. Ben smiled for the first time since she had met him. Apologies are appreciated, Your Highness, but actions matter more than words. If you truly want to help, there are refugee camps throughout Kelthani space that could benefit from mobile medical units. Your people's crystalline biotechnology could revolutionize how we treat genetic diseases. You would trust Kelthani technology in your medical programs? Princess Zara asked in surprise. Every species has something valuable to offer, Ben said, echoing the words Dr. Chen had spoken earlier. The art of civilization is learning how to combine those offerings for the benefit of everyone. Your people's knowledge of crystalline biology could help us save millions more lives across the galaxy. As Princess Zara prepared to leave the medical station, she carried with her a data pad containing proposals for joint medical research programs. More importantly, she carried a new understanding of what it meant to be strong. True power lay not in the ability to conquer and dominate, but in the wisdom to heal and unite. The journey back to Kelthani space would give her time to plan how she would present this new perspective to her father and the Imperial Council. Change would not come easily to an empire built on concepts of superiority and strength, but Princess Zara now understood that the choice between isolation and cooperation would determine whether the Kelthanis remained a feared empire or became a respected civilization. The stars looked different to her now, not as territories to be conquered but as homes to potential friends and allies. Dr. Ben Rivers had taught her the most important lesson of her young life, that wisdom was not about age or evolution, but about recognizing the value in every living being and choosing to build rather than destroy.